I'll be sharing 25 boundaries you can set today to make your life better. Now, boundaries are essential for our self care, our personal growth, and maintaining healthy relationships. Setting boundaries is a powerful way to prioritize your needs, to protect your time and energy, and create a life that aligns with your values. So, let's get started. Boundary number one is to establish clear work-life boundaries. This could mean setting designated work hours and committing to unplugging during your personal time to avoid burnout. This can be very difficult, but I often see clients who don't take a lunch or don't step away to take breaks from work. Even after 5 o'clock hits, they're still working. There are going to be periods and seasons in your work schedule where you may need to work a little bit late, but trying to balance that by actually creating the space and time when you're off work to be off work. And even sometimes it may mean you have to process some things like over the weekend. If you feel like you are still thinking about work, allowing yourself to process these things by writing them down, but setting those specific work schedules can really help you create that work-life balance. And also, one of the things that I've done is send autoresponders even over the weekend so that people know exactly when I'm going to contact them back. So if you work for someone, you can actually talk to your employer and see if that is something that you can implement, and make sure your lunch is in your work schedule so that you're not just working straight through and feeling that burnout. Now, boundary number two that you can set is to practice saying no without guilt. And I know this is easier said than done, but it is okay to decline requests or invitations that don't align with your priorities or your values. There are going to be times where friends are a priority and you're going to want to hang out all the time. There are going to be times where you're going to prioritize family time, and so it's okay to say no, especially if something doesn't sound good, doesn't sound fun. Maybe you don't really enjoy being around that friend. Like, I would even want you to look inwards and say, like, why do I want to say no, but I say yes instead? What challenges do I have to say no? I think a lot of us, the biggest challenge is guilt, but when you know that you are creating the space for yourself to build self-care or to prioritize the things that you actually want to prioritize in this season, it gives you a out. And remember, guilt is a feeling, it's an emotion, it's not going to last forever. And yeah, it may come and go, but just like any feeling comes and goes, it's very important that we do say no to opportunities. Not every opportunity is going to be the right opportunity. Not every invite is going to be one that we want to receive. Boundary number three is to set technology boundaries. This is limiting your screen time, creating phone-free zones, or establishing a nighttime routine where you digitally detox for your better sleep and so that you can actually relax. I've honestly been loving this app called Freedom. And I've been able to block the apps that I don't want to use at a certain time, even blocking my access to my email, because I was notorious to keep looking at my email throughout the day, just waiting for an email. And that just caused unnecessary stress and anxiety. And so blocking it off allowed me to, if I really wanted to get on my email, I would actually have to get my laptop or get on my desktop and look at the email. So creating that resistance to those things by limiting the amount of time you spend on social media. It's okay to use it. It's okay to scroll on TikTok every now and then, but ask yourself, do I have a healthy relationship with social media? How long is my screen time? You can just check your screen time right now. And if it's over 5 hours, then maybe that is where we need to start putting some limits and barriers towards accessing those things. Boundary number 4 is to establish emotional boundaries. I think this is the hardest one depending on how we grew up, and most of us don't learn emotional boundaries from our parents. Most of our parents didn't even know how to set emotional boundaries, but this is learning how to identify and communicate your feelings and needs and be assertive about what you will and won't tolerate in relationships. And this doesn't mean cutting people off. This doesn't mean like, this is the way I want you to do things and this is how you do it. I think think we forget that boundaries are not about telling someone what to do, but it is telling someone what you won't allow, right? So if they do this, they can continue doing whatever they want, but if they continue to do this, you will then do X. And I think that that's the important distinguish when we think about boundaries. And when we're communicating how we feel and what we need, sometimes I think we tend to be more about like subliminal message kind of people, where we're like, they should just know what I need. Instead, practicing being direct, like, I need X. I feel this when you do X, and what I need you to do is X. Those are some ways that you can start practicing saying your needs without filler words like I really feel, like I think. Those are all filler words. Those are all words that actually minimize when you're setting your boundary and telling someone how you feel. Boundary number 5 is to create healthy boundaries around your physical space. So this is keeping your living and working environments free of physical clutter and organized to promote a sense of calm and productivity. And this is something that you can establish as a routine, maybe at the end of your work schedule. At the end of your workday, you pick up for 5 minutes, put a timer, and for 5 minutes, just clean up everything around you. Set that boundary with yourself that you want to set yourself up for the next day to be calm. And sometimes that is so hard. I think a lot of the times we forget that our physical space can represent like how we feel inside. So if we're stressed about work, maybe our workspace is all over the place. We got papers, or maybe we do struggle with something like ADHD and it's hard to keep organized. We have our own organized mess, but does that really actually help you when it comes to feeling calmer? I really think that just having space, even if it's like a Sunday reset or something, to declutter your home, your spaces, it is so important. Those are boundaries that you can set for yourself. Those are boundaries you control. And that's something to know. Boundary number 6 is to protect your energy by setting limits on social interaction. So try to prioritize spending time with positive and supportive people who uplift you and inspire you. We all know those emotional vampires, those people that we probably, maybe they are friends that we've known for our entire lives, but maybe we're in a different season in life. They no longer know us in the now, right? Maybe they know us from a past version of ourselves and they no longer align with the life that we're living. And it's okay to create space and distance. I will say, like, don't ghost people. I think it's okay to communicate with them like, hey, I just think that we're in very different places in our life, and so that may mean I may not reach out as much, you know. And again, I think we feel like it's gonna hurt someone, but either way we stop texting them. So like, what would you rather, just like completely ghost them or actually communicate that, you know, this is where you're at, right? It's not like you're trying not to spend time with them. It's just that it's not a priority. It's not aligned right now. And so creating that space, like, and know the people that are emotional vampires. So these are people who maybe they only talk about themselves. Maybe they don't give you a space to share your feelings. Maybe they put you down. Like, trying to create that space. When it comes to those people too, if there are people in your life who just don't take no for an answer, then that's when I would say, hey, distancing yourself without having to say anything might be the best and safest alternative for you. But being able to protect your energy is so important. Boundary number 7 is to establish financial boundaries. This can look like having a budget, setting savings goals, and practicing mindful spending to ensure your financial security and peace of mind. This could look like having a meeting once a month with your partner or with roommates, whoever you share financial things with, to be able to just like do this together. And it could be a fun activity. You know, setting boundaries doesn't have to be I think we feel like setting boundaries can be tough, but it doesn't have to be. It could be fun. And especially when it comes to financial boundaries, I think we tend to not look at them as boundaries, but it is boundary. It's seeing where is your tolerance level, right? Like seeing, how do I feel? Do I not feel financially secure? Do I need to take a step and look at my finances? We tend to hide away from uncomfortable feelings, and so that may mean if we have uncomfortable feelings towards money, we're not going to be looking at our bank account, you know. And so that is so important, because if we don't look at it, how are we ever going to solve and do better with our finances? Boundary number 8 is to set boundaries around self-care. Prioritize your well-being by scheduling regular time for relaxation, for your hobbies, for exercise, for activities that bring you joy. You have to schedule them. We're busy adults, busy individuals, and often, our self-care is thrown out the window. It is okay whether you're a mom, dog mom, whether you're a busy entrepreneur, whether you're in school, to set time for yourself. And sometimes that could feel selfish, sometimes that could feel like guilt coming towards you, but that is ultimately how you're going to fill up your cup and how you're going to be able to show up for these important areas in your life. So I 100% recommend that you spend time on this. Boundary number 9 is to establish boundaries in your relationships. Communicate your expectations, set healthy limits, and surround yourself with people who respect and value your boundaries. This can be any relationship, romantic relationship, friendship relationships. Like, again, if you are feeling like there's a relationship in your life that maybe is one-sided, I encourage you to communicate how you're feeling. I think also this with relationship boundaries, this could also be sexual boundaries, like your physical, like what are you willing and not willing to do. That's another boundary that I think can kind of like collide with this one when it comes to like intimacy and closeness. Like, what are you willing and not willing to do? What are you comfortable? I think just sharing that with your partners is really important so that you guys are on the same page. And don't set out your partner to fail by just not telling them, being direct about what you need. This is so important to express those things so that they're able to deliver. I think sometimes we're like, well, I don't want to say it because then they're only going to do something because I said something about it. But like, how will they know? How will they know to be better, right? We want to encourage our people in our lives to do better and be better. And so they have to know clear expectations that we need and see if they're able to have the capacity to do those things for us. Boundary number 10 is to create boundaries around your personal growth. And that this is setting a time for learning, self-reflection, personal development to continue to expand your knowledge and skills. So if you've been feeling like, I've been really wanting to learn how to do photography, I've been really wanting to learn how to do painting, like really make the time. That's part of self-care too. So making the time to learn. You are never too old to learn something new. And I would also encourage my perfectionists out there, like, you're not automatically going to be good at this. So sometimes that could shy us away from even trying setting boundaries over learning new things or personal development. Now, I will say too, when we set boundaries with personal development, how much are we consuming on personal development and how much are we actually taking action on that content? So if you're watching this and you're like, I've been watching like 5 or 6 videos on setting boundaries, okay, this is where you stop the video and you start implementing. Pick something that someone maybe gave you feedback on or something that you listened to during a video and take action on it. That is what I mean when it comes to establishing healthy personal development boundaries or personal growth boundaries. Boundary number 11 is to establish boundaries around your health and well-being. This is making, again, that self-care non-negotiable. This is prioritizing your physical and mental health, meaning scheduling that dentist appointment, scheduling that physical, scheduling those things. Now, I know there are barriers to entry when it comes to healthcare. This is where you may look for resources, see what you can do to get access to some of these things, and seek professional help when needed. Like, sometimes you do need someone to help you through your health and well-being and your overall physical and mental health. And that may be, saying like, I am going to take care of this. I'm not going to avoid this. I am going to create a action towards this. Boundary number 12 is to set boundaries around your online presence. So this is not only for like creators, this could be for anybody, but just defining your social media limits, managing your privacy settings. Would you rather have a public account, private account, and be selective about the content that you consume as well, right? Like, revisit the people that you subscribe. Are they still relevant to what you are working towards, or the type of entertainment that you want to continue consuming. That's very important, because if you start watching people on YouTube and then you end up comparing yourself to their life, wanting their life but not doing anything about it, like that may mean you might need to set a limit towards you consuming that content until you started taking action on your own life, right? Because it's like lovely to watch all of these YouTubers, TikTokers, Instagrammers, but how much of that do we then compare ourselves but never take action on the things that we actually want to do? So also, like, if you're a creator, this means who do you want to show on your videos, right? So like, for example, I don't really show my husband on my TikTok on any of my social media platforms. I do maybe one post every year or something, and he may show up in the video, but you don't see his face. Like, that is kind of like a privacy for me. You know, I'm not going to share certain things or certain topics in here that I might not feel okay about sharing. So that is where I set limits on my social media presence. Boundary number 13 is to create boundaries around your time management, using effective time blocking techniques like putting it on your schedule or your Google Calendar, delegating tasks when possible, and avoiding overcommitting yourself. So this is, again, going back to like the saying no, but not like overcommitting yourself to doing more work than you necessarily need to, and also not feeling like you're the only one that can do it, right? Like actually taking the time to delegate, to teach someone so that they could take over the task for you. Boundary number 14 is establish boundary around your personal space. This is allowing yourself alone time to recharge and reconnect with your inner self. It is okay to set time away from everything and be alone. Now, again, with that in mind, ask yourself, am I spending too much time alone and not actually being active or social? It's not black and white. There's always a lot of gray area when it comes to these boundaries, and you have to figure out what your limit is, what your tolerance level is. What are you willing and not willing to do with some of these things? Boundary number 15 is to set boundaries around your goals and dreams, right? Are you prioritizing these goals? Are you eliminating distractions in order to get to these goals? Are you focusing on taking steps toward taking specific action towards your vision? Those are the questions to ask yourself, because when we don't put boundaries on our goals, we just set our goals, but we don't take any action. We don't say, I'm going to prioritize this or make time for this, then it's not going nowhere. We don't make our dreams our reality. Boundary at number 16 is to establish boundaries around work-life balance. This is, again, making sure you set time aside for quality time for loved ones, having date nights, having family times, if you go to church, having church time. Like, engaging in activities that bring you fulfillment outside of the work is so important, and knowing that you're not going to have your phone on there while you're spending time with your family. Boundary 17 is to set boundaries with negative self-talk, practicing self-compassion, challenging self-limiting beliefs, and cultivating a positive inner dialogue. And that happens from kind of becoming self-aware of the negative automatic thoughts that we have. I think too, start with self-awareness, start with figuring out what are the thoughts that I keep coming up about my self-esteem. Maybe it's about body image. Maybe it's about, your lack of where you feel like you are in life. Like, being able to set a limit in how you talk to yourself, especially if you talk to yourself in a negative way, to reframe that to a positive. Maybe not positive, could also be just like a neutral self-talk. I think a boundary that we don't really talk about. Boundary number 18 is to create boundaries around personal boundaries, learning to recognize and assert your physical, emotional, and intellectual limits to protect your well-being. If someone gets too close to you, hey, like, especially, I don't know what it is about, like, there are some people when I'm at Target in the checkout, and some people are just like too close for comfort, and they're like in my personal space, and I need them to back off. And I've done that. I'd be like, oh, you're really close to me. Could you take a step back? And now I may sound rude, but like, if they're in it, and some people just don't know, there's culturally, sometimes it's very different between different cultures, what physical space is okay. And so there's also just like the emotional, personal boundaries. Like, if someone's asking a very personal question, then do you want to answer that very personal question? Intellectual limits, like, is someone like questioning you in a way that's being disrespectful and not a way that is actually being mindful of you. Because I think there's going to be, when intellectual limits, this could also be like political views, things like that. Like, if someone's questioning you, not giving you the time to actually see your point of view, and vice versa with you, that could be that there could be a limit to like, hey, you're disrespecting me, or like we're not having a productive conversation. So I think that this is where we need to like end the conversation or change the subject. Boundary number 19 is to establish boundaries around your personal values. So reflect on what matters most to you and make choices that align with your core beliefs, right? So knowing what we value is so important, because that's going to guide us to make certain action on things, right? So if we know we value family, and someone's asking us to do something on the day that we wanted to spend time with family, that might mean like my boundary is that I spend time with family. That is aligned. So I may have to say no to that request. And that's kind of an example. Boundary number 20 is to set boundaries around your energy vampires. I talked earlier about with relationships that there are some people who are emotional vampires. There are people who drain you. So identifying who these people are and distancing yourself from people or situations that drain your energy or hinder your progress can be beneficial. Boundary 21 is establishing boundaries around your daily routines. This is developing healthy habits. This is setting realistic expectations for yourself and creating rituals that support your overall well-being, and also checking in on these routines and rituals if they still serve you in this season, and making sure that they are not causing more harm than they are good. So it's just good to reflect on this and see, like, am I having these healthy limits with my routines? And then, because too, there's something else, like with routines, daily routines, like I think too, being flexible is a boundary, like being flexible with your routines instead of being rigid, because then that would be a rigid boundary. Like I have to work out. Like if I don't work out, it's like bad. Like that is not an okay view of seeing things, like the healthiest view of seeing things, because life will happen and you will be challenged with your routines. And that's how people fall off their routines, because they are so rigid with their habits. So being flexible. I think James Clear basically says in order to to combat something like this, it's like set 2-minute versions of the habit, right? So if walking for 30 minutes, that may mean just like walking the dog. How can you make that for 2 minutes so that you can keep being flexible and showing up? Boundary number 22 is to create boundaries around comparison and perfectionism. So this is embracing your unique journey. This is celebrating your achievements. This is letting go of unrealistic expectations. This is limiting the amount of people that you compare yourself with. Ask yourself what happens. Like if you find yourself scrolling and then comparing yourself to someone, then that may mean that it's time to unfollow that person or mute them. Boundary number 23 is to set boundaries around multitasking. Focus on one task at a time to boost your productivity and reduce stress. You don't have to be doing a million things at once. I think we like to think that we are good multitaskers, but we're not. We're usually distracted. It's going to give you more peace of mind and you'll feel calmer and relaxed. Boundary number 24 is to establish boundaries around your self-worth, recognize your value, practice self-acceptance, and surround yourself with people who appreciate and uplift you. Boundary number 25 is to create boundaries around your leisure time. Allow yourself guilt-free breaks and leisure activities that rejuvenate your mind, your body, your spirit. Some of these 25 boundaries overlap, but it's what you kind of think about them. And so I hope that this gives you kind of an idea of like an area in your life where you're seeing you might need to establish boundaries that you might have not recognized you need. Remember that setting boundaries is an act of self-love and empowerment. And I hope that these tips inspire you to create a life that honors your needs, your dreams, your aspirations. If you found this video helpful, make sure that you hit the thumbs up button and consider subscribing to the channel. I hope to see you in my next video.